Hello, bonjour, bienvenue, and welcome. In this module, I will continue the discussion of functions that are useful for querying a range of data, allowing you to rapidly evaluate and summarize a data set. So the starting point for this tutorial is a range of fictitious student enrollment data, as I've used before, and I've already frozen the pane to always show the unique identifier column, A, and the header row, and I've changed one column to gray to visually separate the analyses from the data set itself. And in columns T to W, you can see that I've already typed out the analyses that I'd like to perform, and I'll show you the functions that will allow us to do these. So first, let's imagine that we'd like to know the number of students enrolled in an English program and the number of students enrolled in a French program. Some of you may remember that I use these numbers to create a pie chart in my tutorial on charts. So to generate those numbers, I used the COUNTIF function. So in cell U2, I will type equals to indicate that what follows is a formula, and then COUNTIF, open bracket. Now I have to indicate the range of data to evaluate, which in this case is the array shown in column J. So in the middle of typing this formula, I can click on cell J2 and then type Control-Shift down arrow to select the entire data set in column 2. And I'm going to tap F4 to make that range reference absolute, and I'll show you why in a minute. Then I type the value whose occurrence I'm counting. And so in this case, for the English program, that would be indicated by the letter A for Anglais. And when I finish the formula and hit enter, all occurrences of the letter A in column J were counted, which was apparently 56 times. Now in cell U3, I want to do the same thing for the French program students. And one way to do this quickly is to copy-drag the formula from U2. Now I can edit the formula in the formula bar and just change the letter to F, pour français, and the range remains the same even though I dragged it down because I made the range absolute before I dragged it. So there are 44 occurrences of the letter F, that is 44 fictitious students enrolled in the French program. So now let's consider a more complex counting scenario where I want to consider the sex of the student and also their citizenship. Some of you may remember that I used these numbers to create a stacked column chart in my tutorial on charts. So to do this, I will use the COUNTIFS function. So in cell U7, I'll start a formula by typing equals, and then I type the function COUNTIFS. That's plural with an S. Then I type the range for the first criterion, namely column P. So I'm going to select P2, Control-Shift down arrow, and tap F4 to make that range absolute. And in this column, I want to count the occurrence of the word international. Then I select a range for a second criterion. In this case, column N. Click on N2, Control-Shift down arrow, F4 to make it absolute. And to count female international students, I'm going to search column N for the letter F. Now when I close this formula, I can see that there are 7 students who are both female and international. Now because I made these search ranges absolute, I can copy them over to columns V and W and the search ranges haven't changed. And I can just edit the formula to provide a different criterion to count. I can change international to citizen, and in cell W7 I can change international to permanent resident. Now I can select all three cells, U7 to W7, and I can copy drag them down to row 9 and simply edit the value that I'm searching for in column N to male and undeclared. For citizen, male and undeclared. And for permanent resident, male and undeclared. I find it's a quicker way to populate a matrix is by making the range absolute so that you can copy drag it without having to reselect it every time. And the COUNTIFS formula is a very powerful method for populating a matrix of numbers based on 2 or more criteria. It's also possible to not just count occurrences of a certain value in a data range, but to do some math with those values if they're numerical. For example, in this simple table, I would like to know the average GPA of students enrolled in either arts or in sciences in the English stream or in the French stream. So to do that, I'll use the AVERAGEIFS function. So equals AVERAGEIFS, open bracket. Now I select the range of values that I would like to be averaged. In this case, the GPA shown in column K. So I select K2, Control Shift down arrow, F4 to make that range absolute, comma. Then I type the range over which I will apply my first criterion. So in this case, the academic group found in column L, click L2, Control Shift down arrow, F4 to make it absolute, comma. And the value that I'm going to search in this case is arts. Then I type a comma and select the next criteria range, namely the program language found in column J. So click J2, Control Shift down arrow to select the entire column, F4 to make that range, that reference absolute, comma, and the value I'm going to search for in this case to find English students is the value A for anglais. I use a close bracket to close the function. And now I've calculated an average GPA of 6.70 for students enrolled in the arts in the English stream. And because I've used absolute references everywhere, I can copy drag that cell over and now edit the formula in V13 to search not for arts but for science. So the average GPA of English students in the science program is 7.60. And I can select both of these cells, copy them down. The range hasn't changed because it's absolute. And now I can simply edit the formula to search not for A for anglais, but F pour français. Ici, here, and here. You can use more than 2 criteria with AVERAGEIFS, and that allows you to calculate average values for a very specific subset of records within a large range of data. Also, you should check out the functions MINIFS and MAXIFS, which can be used in a very similar fashion to find the lowest and highest values within the subsets, respectively.